Good day, everyone. Welcome back to our literature class. We are continuing our lecture on postmodernism, and this is part two of our discussion. So today we will be identifying two important terminologies. One is something that we have already talked about, which is postmodernism. But right now, I want to differentiate that from the term postmodernity. What is postmodernity? It is a cultural situation, organization of life, structure of feeling under the late capitalism. So capitalism plays a big role in postmodernity. Again, when we say postmodernity, it is a period. It is not an approach of art or literature or philosophy. That's postmodernism. Postmodernity is the period of time when late capitalism is felt in terms of its aftermath, its effects, its influences to the consumers, to the people, to commodity, to economy in general. So again, postmodernity is the period of history, while postmodernism is the literary or artistic or philosophical approach to the text. In postmodernity, the assumption is that everything is to be sold. The goal is profit. The goal is to advance life in terms of selling, production, commodity, and of course, what matters most is the economic development. That is the trend in postmodernity. Now, going back to our previous lectures on the aftermath of the Second World War, one of the immediate effects of the Second World War was actually people's outlook in terms of life in general. That's why existentialism came in. People became more doubtful in terms of the belief of a purpose in life, the belief of probably God, or the subjectivity of humanity. So that's existentialism. And then along the way, some teachings or philosophical and socio-political perspectives on colonialism and post-colonialism, and after which there are some trends in terms of identifying people and national identities and decolonizing their perspectives in terms of everything: education, lives, cultural and traditional identities. That's why the restoration of such identities led to post-colonialism, or the perspective that we are being very critical about the influences of the colonizers, the hegemony of the Western Empire. After such trend, life continues to advance, and countries or nations began to develop their economies. That's why postmodernity came about. There is that abandonment in terms of the modern period, which is basically some of the tenets of the 60s, the 70s, those values, those significant histories in postmodernity are becoming more and more neglected, if not treated as unimportant. Because the idea is history is just a commodity. What do I mean by that? In postmodernity, when you say history is just a commodity, it means that there is no sense of history anymore. There is that perpetual present, meaning focusing or glorifying what we have in the present: production, economy, consumption. These are the most important things in postmodernity. While history, the past, probably tradition, these things are becoming obliterated because we are losing our sense of the past, brought about by the development of postmodernism or postmodernity as a period in human history. Now, late capitalism, just like what we've been emphasizing, plays an important role in the interpretation of postmodern texts. Late capitalism means the dominant economic structure dominated by highly computerized world or economy. Remember, there is the introduction to machines. Because of the development of production, trains were invented, and of course artificial intelligence in the 21st century along the way became popular. And these things replace human labor. Think about, for example, those who were carrying the wagons in the market, those who were doing the labor, the manual labor in supermarkets or in marketplaces, these people were replaced in the industrial revolution along the way. That means you are valuable because you add to the market. That means you are valuable because you consume products. You are equated to profit. You are equated to money. And that's how postmodernity looks at humanity. They were looked at, we were looked at right now, we are being looked at in terms of our profit, in terms of our value, our money, what we buy, what we can contribute financially. The more we spend, the more we buy products, the more we are contributing to economy. That is the aftermath of postmodernity. Again, we are looked at as commodity. We are valued based on our contribution to consumption and production and economy in general. It's as if we're saying that the whole economy will collapse if we stop buying, if we stop consuming products and goods and even services. That's why in postmodernity, again, the value is based on our financial and economic contribution. Because of that, people are made to appear empowered because they are consumers. Because you are consuming something, you look like you are empowered. That's why there's those saying, customer is always right. And if you look at that in a deeper sense, it's very postmodern. Postmodernity has led us to look like we're empowered because we are customers, because we are consumers, because we are contributing to the advancement of economy. So it's all about profit. That is the offshoot of postmodernity. And in application to postmodernism as an artistic and philosophical and literary approach, we know that there is that deliberate forgetting of the past, the over-glorification of the present, and of course, you will see the tug of war between the values of the past and the present-day value. Last episode, we mentioned high art versus low art, quote-unquote. And what we mean by high art is that from the classical period down to the modern period, we always regard art in terms of its values. That's why when you talk about beauty, it is always attributed to elegance and sophistication, and of course, the quote-unquote standard of beauty that we have based on the past. That is what we call high art. It looks elegant, it looks high and elevated in terms of standard. But in postmodernism, because in postmodernity, we know that the value is all about consumption. Whatever sells, whatever is profitable, adds value. Or more, it's actually more valuable than something that is traditional, something that is classical, quote-unquote. No one buys tradition anymore. Maybe few. But when you talk about what sells, what is profitable in postmodernity, you know that these are the things that we consume more than the things that are artistic. That's why, in effect, postmodernity led to that postmodernist perspective on art. Whatever sells, whatever is popular, we consume, and that's more valuable. So high art was disregarded because the grand narrative of high art, the grand narrative or the meta-narrative of high art, classical ones, the beautiful ones, quote-unquote, were already being replaced by low art. And this low art means popular culture. It means that whatever is trending, whatever sells, whatever is marketable to the majority of the consumers, that is considered art already. So when you look at the standard of, let's say, literature, we have novels of Emily Bronte and Wuthering Heights. Okay, we have all of these writers from the past that actually shapes the way we write in the modern period. That's why a lot of people are regarding the classical ones as the standard of writing. It is very verbose, and verbose meaning full of words and expression. It is full of ideas. It's very philosophical. But when you look at the writings of today, what you see are popular ones, probably not as sophisticated as the classics or the modern writers, but we have the Wattpad, we have all of these new series, teleserye, we have whatever sells to the market, whatever sells to the consumers, that is considered the trend of art in postmodernism. And the past is now an intertextual reference that has lost its meaning. Think about how media plays a big role in postmodernity and in, of course, postmodernism. We know that media is what makes things popular. Whatever trends in media, whatever is communicated, that becomes pop culture, that becomes popular. Hence, when you talk about the trend of the present, it probably would refer to the past as a reference, but it has lost its meaning. And what media and other entities would think about in terms of the past is that whatever sells. So let's think about how media exhausted the past in terms of, let's say, historical accounts. The issue in the Philippines between the Marcoses and the Aquinos. These things are probably a historical debate in terms of who's better as a leader, in terms of who really gives a better contribution in the nation. But that's not the issue in postmodernism. The issue in postmodernism is I will exhaust both Marcos and Aquino's historical past to sell something. So it's like, think about this analogy. Think about you looking towards two opposing bodies, two enemies, let's say. And you, as a postmodernist, you create weapon. And in your weapon, you sell guns. You sell gun to the first group who is against the second group, and you also sell gun to the second group who is against the first group. So what you do is you see these two people fighting. These two groups are fighting each other. But you are there to take advantage of their need for weapons. So you sell gun to both A and B. But you don't care about what really happens. You don't really care about what they're fighting for, their values, their advocacies. So similar to the illustration, let's say, of the Marcos and the Aquino. Producer's perspective, they really don't care about the value attached to the Marcoses and the Aquino. What they think about is what sells. So they air it in the news, they propagate it in media, in YouTube, let's say, in other different platforms, because it gets more attention, because it gets more likes in social media, it gets more advertisement, and it sells. So they profit. The more controversial it is, the more trending it is, the more it profits. Producers of art will not care about the standards or the meta-narratives of the past anymore. They don't care about the use of imagery and symbolism anymore. And why are we studying it to begin with? What they care about is whatever sells. Whatever sells in the 21st century, in the postmodern era, is actually anything that is popular, anything that is sexualized, anything that gets the attention of people. And some people would argue that it's not really harmful because the values that we're losing are also things that are over-glorified, things that are also harmful to begin with. Let's say because of popular literature, there is that over-emphasis on the need to fight for human rights, to be careful about, let's say, racial issues, discrimination, stereotypes. These are things that are popular because of whatever is trending as well. But that's good. But what we're losing are actually the value of, let's say, standards of art. And again, that's debatable because some people would say whoever imposes the standard of art in the past can still be questioned because what works for them may not work for us in the postmodern era. And that's true. The world is moving forward and we have to cope with the changes of times. But as a literature student, I want you to see the trend. I want you to see what postmodernity has cost us in terms of what we are losing probably and also what we are gaining. Okay, so when you look at writers of the past, you will see that their trends have become just a display in the library. Okay, it's sort of saying it has become irrelevant, and what is relevant right now is what sells. But there is that continuous theme of conflict between the past and the present, between the tradition and the present times. For example, the second bakery attack by Murakami Haruki, you would see that there is that conflict between the bakery of the past and the quote-unquote bakery of the present. Of course, I will not inform you right now because I want you to read the short story that will be part of your requirement in this term. But just to give you a comparison, that the conflict between the past and the present is always part of the theme of postmodernity. There is the letting go of the past and the embracing of the present, and the kind of effect it brings to the reader. Another thing that you can take a look at is actually the writing style or the narrative style. From the linear narrative of the past, you will see that there are some digressions, some twisting of narratives in the postmodern literature. In films, let's say, and in novels, you would see that it's not just linear or circular anymore, but there are different ways of narrating. These are things that you will discover as you continue to explore postmodern literature. Now, the thing of the past has become a thing of nostalgia. That's why genres that has to do with the past, like Back to the Future, or let's say Star Wars, all of these grand narratives of the past has become an entertainment for you to have a glimpse of the past and be nostalgic about it. But it's not the focus anymore. The focus is whatever sells in the present. So writers and producers of art will take a look at the past just to offer something that we are not usually familiar at in the present. Because what we are familiar at is what's trending. That's why when you refer to the past, it is not because you really want to go back to the past. It's because you know it will sell. The past will sell because nobody talks about it anymore. So if you are that kind of person who probably is very interested in the narrative of the past, then producers will leverage and take advantage of that and offer that as they continue to profit for it, okay? So it's not because I want you to experience the past, but I will create a movie about the past because I still want to sell. So the main goal of everything is commodity, consumption. And again, just like what I said, human beings were valued not because of our unique individual identities, but because of what we can contribute to the economy. We are looked at as profit. We are looked at as money, as market. That is the trend of postmodernism. And that's why in art and literature, again, just to summarize, we have the high art and the low art. We have the classical to modern art, which is very elegant, and the standard is very intact, versus the low art or the popular art, the popular culture, mass culture, let's say, and emergent culture. That means whatever trends, okay? So instead of talking about Mona Lisa of the past, you talk about Bella Poarch and M to the B, okay? Whatever that is in TikTok, okay? Instead of probably being knowledgeable about the writing style of let's say Shakespeare, or the writing style of Filipino writers such as Paz Marquez Benitez in Dead Stars or Nick Joaquin. Now what we are concerned about are the things that sells in Filipino media. Okay, we are into series, we are into teleserye. What we want is actually the sampalan and the sabunutan, the kabit, and all of this paghihigante in Filipino teleserye. What we want is actually a cheap comedy that has all sarcasm and panlalait in the likes of the Metro Manila Film Festival, or probably I'm not attacking, I'm just giving my opinion, humble opinion as a teacher. Or probably we care about let's say what trends in our neighboring countries such as K-pop. So we have our version of K-pop. We have Thailand's boys love series. So that's why right now we have the Filipino BL series as well, because we want to adapt, not in terms of culture alone, but because we want what sells. Okay, so probably as consumers, what we see is the value of emergent and popular literature. But what producers see is actually their profit. Okay, so that trends, it sells. So definitely we will create our Filipino version because we also want to profit from it. But what they will package it in a way that is valuable. They will package it in a way that it's all about time, that we destroy the stigma and all of this and that, we normalize instead of this and that. So we use beautiful words that appeals to our heart, to our advocacy. But what we do is actually inuuto. Okay, so we are getting attention of the people in terms of what is personal to them, all because we want to sell something, all because we want to profit. That is the trend of postmodernity. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. We will know more about that when we talk about pop culture, pop literature. But right now, what I want you to do as an exercise is to read The Second Bakery Attack. Think about what is postmodern in the short story. Think about the changing of values, the examples that were used in the story. Think about how the main character narrates about his past experience and how he equates that to the present experience that he is trying to reenact or relive. And of course, the many other elements of postmodernity in the story. So I will leave that to you as a literature student to identify. I hope you learned something insightful today. And just like how I always end my episodes, happy reading.